Hello and welcome to All About Billings. We are a show dedicated to discovering the people who make Billings a great place to work and live. We will interview local business people, community leaders, artists, entertainers, and we will learn from them all about their successes, their failures, and their connection to Billings. I'm your host, Nancy Brooke, broker and owner at Billings Best Real Estate. And today it is my pleasure to have as my guest Brittany Gage, who is the owner of the Healthy Bee dietitian, program, counseling,
yes.
all of that in
Yes.
one, Brittany.
Exactly.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to be here.
Well, I was really excited when I read a little bit about what you do. So you basically work with people who either have disordered eating or maybe
Yes.
just want some education on eating better. So
Yes.
tell us how you got started in this line of work.
Yeah. So after many years of college and education, I had a strong urge and a strong will to help people specifically with eating disorders, but also those just seeking a healthier lifestyle. So after some years of finding out how I wanted to go about this process, I learned about private practice and the ability that you have to make changes in people's everyday lives. I also have a strong love for the counseling aspect of dietitian work and really enjoy one-on-one conversations with people and being able to dig deep and help them learn things about themselves and how it affects their habits.
Well, I will tell you that probably healthy eating is one of the biggest challenges so many people have as adults.
Yes.
I think to some of even my weightlifting groups, which you would think is about weightlifting, but it's not about weightlifting. It's about people, I don't know what to do about this fat spot. And,
Right.
and they're so confused about the role that food plays in their overall well-being, the shape of their body, all of those things.
Yeah.
So what do you find the most challenging thing in today's society?
I think that the most challenging thing that I think a lot of people run into is there's so much information on the internet and it can be disseminated so quickly. And so it's really hard to find a sounding board that you can kind of say, okay, this makes sense, and there's scientific backing and there's approval from credible sources. And so I do get people all the time that's just like, I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know what's true. I don't know what's not true. And in turn, it affects the way they feel about themselves, how they feel about their body. And so it becomes a day-to-day issue because you don't just eat once a week or once a year.
Right.
It's a multiple times a day thing. And so it can cause some confusion and some upset over the information that's out there and what they're doing with themselves.
Well, and you make a good point because, yes, we have to eat every day, most people eat every day.
Yeah.
And you have to think about if you have like an addiction to food, you can't just stop eating. Where if you're addicted to cigarettes or drinking or gambling, you can just stop that behavior. But with eating, it's a hard thing to evolve if you do have disordered eating.
Yeah. And there's so many aspects to that. There's cultural aspects and social aspects, and all of those things go together into the food system that makes up your personal food system and the overall food system. And so navigating those challenges can be really difficult, and sometimes people don't realize how much of a negative effect it can have on their lives and how much grief they're getting from it. So having the ability to kind of intervene at those times and give them the relief can be really profound for some people.
So let's say I come to you, I want a consultation. Where do we begin?
You can get a referral from your doctor. That's one route. I also have a website that you can book a call on, and you can schedule directly that way. When you do that, the first steps for me is just to get to know you. So I kind of joke that the first appointment is super annoying because I ask you 1.5 million questions about yourself and your life and your background and all the things that you don't think are relevant that actually are.
And it's like, what is she doing?
I know.
We're here to talk about my eating.
Exactly. Why are you asking me who does grocery shopping and, what my favorite foods and disliked foods are? That makes sense. But then I have some other questions that might not make as much sense. So at first until we dive into things. So after we do an initial appointment, we'll start to make a plan and we'll start to make some goals. And then as the plan goes and doesn't go, we'll look at barriers. What's preventing you from doing this plan? What makes it easy? What are some things that we can maybe break down if you've got disordered thoughts or distorted thoughts? And then we do a lot of troubleshooting and we make things work for them so that nutrition is not just an overall concept that they're understanding and getting, but it's personalized and it works in their life.
So what do you find the biggest barriers are for people who are wanting to maybe change their eating for whatever reason and have some trouble making those changes?
I feel like time is a really common one. Time, a lot of people have the thought that, they have to make this elaborate home-cooked meal to be healthy. Or they have to spend a lot of money to be healthy, and that's just not true. So we can kind of work with some solutions that fit in their life and their time constraints. That's kind of a general one. There's also some other, little things. They might have some preconceived notion on what's healthy and what's not healthy, and we can break down those barriers. But yeah, there are some common ones that I do get from, client to client, and time is definitely a hard one for everyone.
Well, I suppose just the time to prepare meals, the time to go grocery shopping.
Yes.
And you have a young family. I'm sure you can relate.
Oh,
it's
yes.
like a lot of times it seems like, when do you fit this all in?
Right. Yeah. And just planning alone is difficult. And so that can be a big stop for some people. And they just say, well, I'm just not going to do it then. I'm just going to, do something else, do something easier. And in turn, they don't always feel great about it. They don't love their choices, or they might eat something that doesn't give them what they need for the day. So we do try to work around and say, okay, what's going to work for you? Because what works for me might not work for you. And there are solutions that have got to fit their life. And sometimes I do put it back on the person and say, okay, you know your schedule. Tell me what works for your schedule. Is it going to be a weekend thing? Is it going to be a weekday thing? And so it's a lot of troubleshooting. It's a lot of getting to know the person and getting to know their motivations and their barriers and working through that.
So really figuring out, if my week is so busy because I'm working and maybe have activities after school with the kids, maybe the weekend works out better for me to do my shopping. Maybe I can prepare some things in advance, that kind of idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I suppose when you break it down that way, then they say, oh, yeah, that might make sense.
Right, yeah. And even then, sometimes, they do make a change and they're like, well, that wasn't really great. I didn't like that. So we go back to the drawing board and we figure it out and we make it work. And then we find a long-term solution that works, that's sustainable for them and feels doable. It doesn't feel like a diet. It doesn't feel like, this major thing that is a burden. It ends up being just another lifestyle thing that they do. It becomes part of their routine.
Well, I don't know if you've seen this before, but a lot of times I'll see people who are going to change everything 360 all at once.
Overnight.
They're going to eat only these kinds of foods. They're going to work out an hour or two a day. And then after a week or two, they just get burnt out.
Yeah, they're like, this is exhausting,
right. So when it comes to nutrition, how do you recommend people get started and sustain if you are trying to make a change in your eating?
Yeah, small and simple is how I start. Little things, little changes, and then build upon that. For example, just a simple one is drinking more water. It's something that a lot of people, I end up telling them at some point, drink more water. I'm not going to recommend that you triple or quadruple your water tomorrow. You're going to be, going to the bathroom 20 times in the next day. But let's add maybe 16 ounces tomorrow more. And then as you become more used to that habit, let's add in another couple things that we can adjust your lifestyle. And with that, it comes to a point where it's not difficult. It's a routine, and you feel good about it. And then when you have maybe a day where you're not doing that, you start to notice. You're like, oh man, I am super thirsty today. And doing that, it helps people get used to a habit, and you don't feel like you have to change overnight, and you don't get burned out as fast.
So then you sort of build upon successes, like, okay, I drank more water, and then whatever my goal is for this next week, maybe I don't know, maybe I'm not eating snack foods in the middle of the day.
Right, yeah.
Maybe it's something like that. Maybe I switch that for an apple or something like that.
Yeah, yep. work on small and simple things first, and then you'll notice over time that those build up to be really big things, and really big changes can occur when you do all of the little things along the way.
So why do you think so many people can lose weight, but then they gain it back?
There's a lot of things that go into that. I think personally, I feel like there are some diet plans that are pretty restrictive.
Sure.
And are not super sustainable. So
right.
You will see weight loss that occurs in a really restrictive diet plan, but it might not necessarily be the best thing for your body. And as a response, your body will fix itself, so to say. And so when I'm counseling people that want to lose weight, we look at more of a conservative, diet plan that will still put them in a deficit, but they might not necessarily see as big of a weight loss so fast, so that your body doesn't freak out, so to say, it and just gain it all back. I also do think when people are not doing diet plans that are sustainable, and then they have to be done, or they end it and they go back to what they were doing before, it's natural that your body is just going to go back to what it was before. So finding habits that are sustainable, that you can keep for a long term, that don't feel restrictive and feel like a diet, is going to be better for your overall health.
Well, and I hear what you're saying too about being so restrictive, losing weight fast. And then the other thing happens when you lose weight fast, you tend to lose muscle. I think you can get more wrinkly looking, especially as you get older if you lose weight fast.
Yeah.
Your body maybe you're low in energy.
Yeah,
there's a lot of bad effects.
Your body just doesn't bounce back the way it should. When it can trick your body into doing some pretty interesting things when you lose weight really fast. And it really is important for everybody to keep the muscle tone that they have now.
Right.
So when they're losing weight, we want to preserve as much muscle tone as you can.
Right.
So.
Well, and you do see a lot of people have, I don't think maybe it is as bad, but when I was growing up, there were all sorts of crazy diets, like the cabbage soup diet.
Oh, yeah.
Where you'd eat like fruit one day, vegetables one day, 7 bananas and 7 glasses of milk the next. I mean, it was crazy
all the time.
It was crazy, and you'd get so sick.
Yeah.
You couldn't sustain that way of eating. So after 3 days, I could never do the 7-day diet.
Yeah,
but
that was probably wise.
That's kind of a crazy example of the crazy diets that are out there. Do you still see some of that? And and we all know, like, you can restrict certain foods and probably lose weight.
Right.
But then if you love eating that way, it's probably fine.
Yeah. Well, and it is a balance too of your mental health. It's just as important to take care of your mental health as it is your physical health. And so if you find yourself in like doing a really crazy fad diet, restrictive diet, and it wreaks havoc on your mental health, like I always question, was that worth it? Was it worth it to lose a couple of pounds for what you lost to your mental health? And that does become a question that I think sticks with people when they consider, going on restrictive diets or jumping onto the next fad diet, is what is it doing to you long term? Not just physically, but mentally. And I think that can be hard to think about, but good to think about, worth the time.
And the other thing, I know a lot of people will want to lose weight for a specific goal.
Right.
I'm going on a trip. I'm going to be in a wedding. I'm getting married. I mean, whatever it is.
Yeah.
How do you work with timelines? Because sometimes that's kind of hard, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's important to set reasonable expectations.
Okay.
So if somebody comes to me and they say, I want to lose 30 pounds in 2 months, no matter what their initial weight is, I might go, let's think about if that's reasonable. Can we do that in a healthy way? If the answer is no, I'll help you do what we can, but I want you to stay healthy. So, I'm not going to sacrifice your health for, you losing a couple of extra pounds. So reasonable expectations is a big deal. And I think people don't always love that answer, but overall, I'm an advocate for their health. So I'll say that to them if it needs to be said.
So mindset-wise, what is the biggest mindset shift that has to happen for somebody to take on a new eating way of life?
Yeah. It kind of depends on the person.
Okay.
That's kind of a cop-out answer, but sometimes people want to eat healthy and don't know what to do. Sometimes people think they eat healthy and might not necessarily have the best diet. So it really depends on where they're at. But if you can meet them where they're at and go from there, the mindset shift becomes something that it's motivated by them. So they find the motivation, they find the things that they want to do, and then I say, okay, how can we overcome that? What are the things that we need to tackle mindset wise for you to get that goal that is motivated by yourself?
Well, and eating is complex, isn't it? Because it's
yeah.
so much more than just this tastes good.
Yes.
There's, like you had mentioned earlier, there's a whole cultural thing, and I know some people have their mamas who want them to come eat
Right.
sweets and
Yeah.
pies and
Yeah.
whatever else that they make, and even though maybe the person's diabetic and really shouldn't be eating that way.
Yeah, yeah.
That's hard.
There are so many cultural components, and there's cultural foods, you know, that go along with how you were raised and what kind of environment you were raised in. And it's not necessarily that you have to get rid of those things. The cultural foods are so important. They can be a way that we share experiences with other people. We can bond over cultural foods. So it's about balancing those foods and making sure that we balance health and the foods that we love. And I feel like there is a way for everybody to do that. No matter what their cultural foods are, no matter what their preferences are, there is a way to find, you know, the foods that we love and the foods that we need, and marry them together.
Well, and maybe you don't need to eat cherry pie every day, but if cherry pie is part of what your mother wants to make you, you can have a piece.
Exactly. Yeah.
Without
moderation and balance.
Right.
For sure.
The other thing I find so interesting about, I guess, eating is like how it has a social factor too, and not just with family, but like you go out for dinner, you go out for appetizers.
Yeah.
And it's almost like if you don't want to participate, that you're a bit of an outcast, if you know what I'm saying. It's
bringing
almost
attention to yourself.
Yeah. It's kind of odd, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, it's similar to alcohol consumption.
Sure.
You know, the person that's not drinking is kind of the, well, what's going on there, you know? So, but it's the same with food. And so it can be really difficult for some people to manage that expectation of their friends and their family members when they're at an event or at a, you know, dinner where the expectation is that you'll have what's there. So it can be hard to balance that and also feel like it's, you're still getting what you need and what you want at the same time.
I have also heard about people who have family or friends in their life who maybe try to sabotage their success.
Yeah.
How do you counter that if that's your situation?
I think it's really important to have boundary conversations with people like that.
Probably in lots of areas,
it can be
not
really,
just food.
And so I do have clients that I've coached through, like, hey, let's practice that conversation. Like, what is that going to look like for you?
You're looking so skinny.
Right.
And you're like, I'm really not skinny, but okay. You need to eat.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, how can we address that in a way that preserves a relationship, but also makes it known that, like, this is how you want the conversation to go, or this is what you're comfortable with, or you're working on this. And so, yeah, it's good to, like, role play those and help somebody practice that out and say, okay, I do want to have this conversation. It'll be worth it to say those things to the person that I love or my friend in order to get me where I'm going and also, you know, still have that relationship.
Right. Yeah. Well, and we know that, I mean, in America, more people are overweight or obese than whatever is considered healthy weight.
Right.
But then there's also people who are on the other extreme who don't want to eat, are anorexic, and so that's a whole other specialty that you have.
Yes, yeah, so I am specialized in eating disorders.
Right.
So I'm in the process of getting another credential. So dietitians can get a eating disorder specialist credential. It takes a couple of years to get, so I'm on that track now. But I do see people that they have a really hard time with body acceptance and eating on a regular basis, or finding themselves having really, really strict diets that go even below what you would call a fad diet. So,
Well, I remember there was one young lady I used to know, and she would maybe have a carrot, like, for her meal. Yeah. And she was really skinny. Right. Obviously, there's something going on, but I'm sure that must be really hard for family members.
It can be really hard for family members, and sometimes even it's generational. You know, you'll find grandparents and parents that deal with similar issues. There are some research about genetic components to eating disorders, and also a lot of times eating disorders, almost all the time, run in with mental health disorders. So those things can play back and forth on each other and make it really difficult for people to even realize why it would be important to eat and why it would be important to take care of yourself in that way.
Well, I suppose there's a lot of confusion and shame when you have something like that happening, right?
Yes,
I mean,
yeah.
because you probably look at yourself in the mirror and know you're pretty skinny, but
Yeah,
you don't
sometimes.
necessarily want to change that.
Yeah, it can be really hard for people to get help and to
Yeah.
even make that, confession to somebody that they're struggling. Whether it be a, mental health professional, their doctor, their primary care,
Right.
or reaching out directly to a dietitian. It's a big step to make that reach out and say, I do need help. This is difficult. I'm going through this. And even, I'll see people that have gotten to that point and then they'll come to a couple appointments and they kind of close back up. But it's a really difficult process to open up to somebody and admit that you need help and that you're scared or whatever the emotion is that goes with that.
So if you're a parent or family member or loved one has an eating disorder, what would you recommend that they do to try to help the person?
Yeah. Hard conversations can be really, really important. It's difficult. That's why I call it a hard conversation. But coming from a place of love, and there are some resources online that I will point people towards on how to have those conversations in a way that expresses love and shows that you're there for their best interest and you want to make sure that they know that you love them, and then reaching out to the appropriate parties that can help them and say, I'd like you to meet with a dietitian and just talk about what your habits are like and make sure that you're medically stable and all of the things that the dietitian and the practitioner would also do. But yeah, it can be really difficult to start that conversation as a family member or a friend, but it's so important. And
Right.
and a lot of times just having somebody see them in that way and letting them know that they are seen and they're noticed and they're loved can really be the breaking point for them to be able to get help.
Well, it sounds like you have to not only know your food stuff, but you also have to be a little bit of a counselor with people. I mean, not that you're specifically a counselor, but you have to take on that role.
It is. So dietitians are uniquely positioned in that we do the food part, we do the food science part, but we also have a rich psychology background as well. So both undergraduate and my graduate work had a lot of psychology base, and we do use techniques in conjunction with therapists to help each other out. So 99% of the time, I will make sure that most of my eating disorder clients are also seeing a therapist. But I also support them in that way.
Right.
We talk a lot about emotions and emotions surrounding food and habits and how that emotion becomes an action that might be putting them in harm's way.
And they might not even be aware of what they're feeling, right?
Yeah.
And I suppose, there's anorexic, and then you have binge eating disorders, you have, probably a whole host of things I've never even heard of. But
Yeah. And recently, in the last couple of years, the diagnostic criteria has expanded.
Okay.
So it's giving practitioners, especially with insurance, the ability to treat a wider range of people that have different types of eating disorders. Like ARFID, for an example, is a type of eating disorder that's avoidant restrictive. So it's not necessarily based in body concerns, body image concerns. It can be sometimes a fear of choking on food, and so they don't consume food. So there's a myriad of reasons that somebody could have an eating disorder that they avoid intake, and it's compromising their health. And dietitians are able to treat all of those.
Well, and you've had your own business, Healthy Bee,
Yes.
for a year and a half.
Yes.
What made you decide to go out on your own?
It was always part of my plan to do
Okay.
this. Since I started my master work, and I was able to be with a mentor that had done it herself. I just knew that was like on my radar, like it was going to be a thing at some point. And I have 4 kids, as I mentioned, and as I am raising them, I found that my drive to be able to control my schedule and be my own boss just really solidified in the chaos of having 4 kids. But aside from that, it was something that I had wanted to do for a long time, and that gave me the nice push that I needed to make it happen.
So what has been the most enjoyable part, aside from controlling your schedule, about having your own business?
Yes. I love seeing people's progress. I love being able to graduate somebody from my services and be able to see them realize that they're worth taking care of, and they're worth the time and the effort that it takes to, challenge this eating disorder, or if it's not an eating disorder client, see them achieve their goals and feel good about it. And it's so wonderful just to be able to be part of that and to help them along in that journey.
Well, I suppose, anybody who's maybe just wanting to change their eating, like I said, maybe shed a few pounds, nothing dramatic. It's nice to have that support, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And it's nice to be able to just, like I said, have somebody that's a sounding board and just say, that is a possibility. That internet thing you found is something you could do, but maybe this would be a little better for you. And then, we can make a plan and we can go from there. And so it's really great to see people achieve their goals and tell me that they feel better and that their, outlook on things is better. And so I feed off of the progress of other people, which is fun.
What's been the hardest thing about having your own business?
Marketing.
Oh, yeah.
It's so hard to market yourself and to put yourself out there. And I'm not like an extraordinarily outgoing person, but I do love working with people. So putting myself out there so that I can do what I love can be difficult, but it's necessary as a business owner.
So how have you moved beyond that reluctance?
I have some really great friends that are good at marketing.
Good.
And guide me a little bit. And I do have some mentors, so some other friends that have had private practices for a couple of years. And so they've given me some guidance and what I should do and what I should avoid. So I cannot be so reluctant and can put myself out there.
And so how do you find clients aside from just having them contact you directly? Are you involved with insurance companies, healthcare?
I am, yep. Okay. So I'm in network with a number of insurance companies, which is nice because then I'm on their directories. I have referrals from other providers, so nurse practitioners, PAs, and doctors that will send people my way. And then I can be found on my website and some other marketing websites that people will contact me that way.
Well, so let's talk about how do people get in touch with you if they want to find out more about how to be a healthy bee.
Yeah. My website has a book a call button, so you can put yourself on my schedule at any time, and I'll give them a call and get them all set up and do the heavy lifting for them.
Okay, and what's your website?
It's healthybeedietitian.com.
Healthybeedietitian.com.
Yes.
And so you meet in person? Do you meet on Zoom if somebody's
So I have both options available.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I just opened a office downtown, and that's a week and a half old, so it's very new. But I am seeing clients in person.
Okay.
I also provide services all over Montana. So anybody that has a computer and internet connection can meet with me. And I do service a lot of rural communities. So you don't have to drive 5 hours to see a dietitian. You can just hop on a call.
Well, that's wonderful. And I can see your heart is really in this. This
I
is
love
something that you're so passionate about.
Yes, yes.
Well, what a wonderful resource you are for our community and our state.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful having you here today. And everybody, we thank you for joining All About Billings, and we hope to see you next time.